من شركة IBM مايكروسوفت TMC خبرتهم في مجال اتجاهات الحكومة الذكية. نبتدي من شركة IBM. مستر ويليام كلابرت راح يقدم لنا برزنتيشن بعنوان Smarter Cities Leader for Middle East. Please, Mr. William.
Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Willem Kleppert from IBM. First, let me start off by thanking you for your presence today. It's a great honor to be here. I had the pleasure and honor of being here approximately 1 year ago, and during that discussion I talked about IBM, how IBM approaches smarter cities, what it means to be a smarter city, a smarter government, obviously. And today we want to take it one step further. I will be talking briefly about how practically one can become a smarter government, a smarter city. And more specifically, I will be focusing on one key domain, which is mobility. So let me start off by telling you about my weekend. Now, personally, I don't often talk about my weekends and what I do on the weekend. But this weekend, I went to see Spectre, which is the new James Bond movie. And a lot of people might ask, obviously, so what's the relevance between Spectre and mobility or mobile governments? The first point is, I was thinking to myself, James Bond, what does he do? Or what does he do that we don't see him doing in a movie? And in essence, James Bond is a normal citizen. Okay? He is demanding, he drives the fastest cars, and he's relentless in his aim to realize goals. So he's very practical. Okay? That's the first thing you have to understand. A second thing, obviously, is the fact that James Bond is mobile, he's all over the world, and he expects to be treated as a unique person, equally, obviously, changing the world. So once again, for government, this means that you have to see your citizens, in essence, as James Bonds. They are relentless, they are demanding, and they are mobile. When we look at governments these days, one of the key elements that we see is the fact that a huge amount of applications are moving from traditional back office applications to mobile applications. If you look at the statistics, for example, in the United States, 35% of all applications will be mobile. And this will even increase more in the coming months and years. So in other words, your citizens will significantly access services using mobile technology. In 2014, more people will be accessing the applications using mobile devices compared to desktop devices. And today, citizens have extremely high expectations of what a mobile application should look like and what it should do. And I've tried to summarize a number of the key elements of mobile devices and mobile applications. And I'm not going to go through the entire list, but I think the key elements of the fact that they need to be convenient, they need to be easy to use, so the usability of a mobile application must be significantly high. It must be trustworthy. As a government, people trust you, so they need to be able to trust the applications that you use to gather data and to interact with them. Privacy is obviously closely related to that. Security is an obvious one. Availability and accessibility, because citizens work in essence 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, they want to be able to access your services whenever they want to access these services, when it is convenient for them. So in other words, you have to make sure that your systems are reliable, they're very performant, and they're very accurate when providing a specific service to your citizens. And then obviously we see that some elements are hindering or preventing governments from actually rolling out substantial and strategic strategies around mobile applications. A first challenge that I always hear when I speak to governments is, okay, where do we actually start? What's the strategy that we as an organization need to have to become a leader in mobile strategies or applications? Secondly is, okay, we know what we need to do, but how do we get there? Who are the resources that will actually deliver this work for us? Is it the core business of a government to produce, maintain, and make sure that applications evolve, or is it not a core business? So you have to decide on who the resources are, what the right skills are for the resources, also the right skills are that the resources need to have, and also closely related to that, who are the partners that you need to partner with to actually deliver these services in a professional, in a consistent, in a reliable manner. Governance, obviously, that's an obvious one. You need to define the standards and the principle with which governments will develop and will maintain their mobile applications. And lastly, the application management. So once you've built this application, these applications will obviously need to be, let's say, maintained for a couple of years and will also need to evolve. So you have to think about these 4 criteria when defining a mobile strategy. So in our opinion, what should governments be focusing on when developing these mobile strategies? Firstly, is selecting a number of key applications. You have to start somewhere. You have to understand that developing a mobile strategy is a roadmap. It's not about developing a big bang and having all these applications all at once available to your citizens, but starting off with a number of key applications which really make the difference for your citizens, where they really see the value of you as an organization, as a government, providing relevance, value, and convenience for them. Personalization, in other words, citizens need to feel that they are unique. They want to have something which is tailored to their needs. So something that's valid, for example, in the UAE or in Europe or in USA is not necessarily as such replicable to your current local situation. So you always need to adapt to the local market needs, the local expectations of your citizens. What we also see is that a lot of citizens are requesting real-time information, real-time notifications, the ability to receive notifications when something is really happening and to be able to respond to that. And closely related to that is a whole question of geolocalization. We as consumers, we as young consumers, we like to see things on maps. If you look now around us, everything is based on Google Maps. We like to visualize something, click on it, zoom in, and have the details related to an incident or to a certain activity on a geographic map. And two-way communication is not only about giving information to your citizens, but also allowing your citizens to interact with you and provide you as a government with certain information. But then obviously as a government you have to have the obligation and the maturity to also take into consideration the feedback that they gave you and actually act on that feedback as well. So how to succeed? I'm going to focus on 3 components. I already briefly spoke about the fact that it's a roadmap, it's a journey. You have to start small, you have to start somewhere, you have to start with the key applications that will make a difference for your citizens, where they see the relevance. Obviously identify quick wins. Once you are able to provide mobile services in a certain domain, citizens will have more confidence in you as a government and will obviously be more inclined to use future applications and to also use applications in a broader way. Obviously, stakeholder commitment is a key one. Speed of execution and decision making. This is all about being agile because the mobile environment is so dynamic. Something that's, for example, relevant 6 months ago or a year ago might not be relevant tomorrow. So you have to be able to have a platform and environment, but also a decision making process that allows you to actually adapt applications and mobile strategies to what the consumer wants at this point in time. I briefly spoke about personalized services. And it's not only about mobile, but it's equally about the fact that you need to combine the mobile environment, your applications, with your web services. So once again, we're still in a phase where people are moving towards mobile applications, but that does not mean that they are no longer using their desktop environments. Okay, a brief word about IBM and a strategic collaboration with Apple. So for me personally, this is one of the most, I dare to call it even a revolutionary joint ventures or collaborations that were started about a year ago. So IBM and Apple decided to strategically collaborate. And I'll be very honest and transparent about this. IBM as an organization is very efficient, very talented in the enterprise market. We know how to work with governments, we know how to work with companies, but we're less focused on the consumer market. If you look at Apple, it's completely the opposite. Apple as an organization, they're very good in developing products for consumers. So consumers, once again, are demanding. And Apple has really shown its ability to understand what consumers need and to actually provide services which are in line with consumer applications. So what IBM has done with Apple is actually try to bring the best of these two worlds together. In other words, allowing applications, consumer-like applications, to enter into the enterprise world. And obviously from an IBM perspective, the value and the relevance that we bring is the understanding of the industry. So I think I can honestly say that IBM as an organization really understands what governments are struggling with to a certain extent, and also what they should be doing to provide services to citizens, to internal employees, or to businesses. So combining IBM and Apple really made sense from a strategic perspective, especially in light of the fact that more and more of our citizens are moving to mobile applications. Over the past 18 months, let's say about the last 12 months, but we're still in the process, we're developing more than 100 specific applications aimed at bringing relevance and value to government entities. And obviously from an IBM perspective, what we bring to the relevance, or what we bring to this equation, is the fact that we can support these applications, we can design these applications, and combining that with Apple Care, which is extremely well appreciated for its quality of service, I think it's just a winning formula. And at the bottom, you can see some of the examples that we're doing, moving more and more, for example, to the iWatches as well. All right. So what I want to do now is be like James Bond and be very pragmatic about what we're talking about. So I've spoken a bit about the theory, things that governments should be doing, but let me show you some examples of what governments have been doing. So first one is citizen collaboration. Citizen collaboration is all about interacting with your citizens. And what we have done in France, for example, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's in Nice and in Marseille in the south, is actually develop an application that allows citizens to capture certain problems that they see in a city. So it could be something like pavements, it could be garbage, it could be graffiti. So very simply is the fact that the citizen can take a picture of this let's say, incident, and it will send this picture up to a centralized platform, which we call the Intelligent Operations Center, which is then obviously intertwined with the planning system of the government or of the city. So very practically, citizens are giving information to the city, and the cities are actually able to better capture what's going on in their city, what are the issues that the citizens are facing, and obviously then the city mayors, for example, can respond to these incidents by sending out specific task forces or teams to actually clean up the garbage or clean up graffiti. So to a certain extent, the city is gaining a lot more information, and on the other hand, it's also becoming more efficient because it can actually start planning these interventions in an efficient way. Some screenshots on how this practically looks like. You have service requests. In other words, you can identify what type of issue you have. You can have an abandoned vehicle. You have a construction debris, for example. You can have graffiti that needs to be removed. So the citizen can actually select a type of intervention on a type of incident, and then obviously add some comments. This information is sent automatically to the operations center, where the government or the city mayor can then see, okay, these are the types of incidents that I have, and equally these I need to act on. Just a side note on this, I've actually seen a similar application being used for policing activities. So more and more citizens are being used to actually provide information to the police. So it's not only about, for example, waste, but it could equally be about domestic violence, it could be about graffiti, it could be about vandalism. More and more governments are actually creating a platform where citizens can also mention certain criminal activities, which actually then obviously could be acted upon by the government. I briefly spoke about the fact that things are being indicated on maps, so the citizen can see around him, for example, what are the types of incidents that have been indicated. And then from a government perspective, what the government can see, what the city can see is once again all this information on a geographical map, being able to identify what are the problems and how do I need to solve these problems. Okay, so you can have a geographic view on incidents in your city, and it can optimize your resource planning as such. So very simply, a mobile application engaging with citizens, capturing information from the citizens, and then as a government, as a city, being more efficient in the way that we respond to these incidents. Community policing. So this is an example of how a policing unit can actually provide mobile devices, being smartphones or being smaller tablets, to their policing people on the streets. So this could be a day in the life of a police agent. He wakes up in the morning, he logs onto his tablet or his smartphone, so you as a government know that he's active, you know he's on duty, and you know where he is. Then he could receive some information, which is typically called, in the policing context, it's a briefing. So in other words, he receives information from his management saying, hey, in your neighborhood or in a specific block, these are the type of incidents and problems that we have been facing. I want you to pay attention to these. He could receive specific instructions from his police officer. He could, for example, be told, Mr. X, today I want you to go to police region A, and I want to do 10 surveys on customer satisfaction. I want you to actually try and understand how happy my citizens are with the services that we as a policing organization are providing to them as a community. And obviously all this information will then be filtered up back to the, let's say, the central government or the central city. One of the other examples we have in there is around satisfaction surveys. It could be victim reports. So it's a question of mobile device allowing you to capture information in this context by a police officer and having all that information filter up into a central location where the government can actually then once again visualize this information and also analyze this information. So this is, for example, what the supervisor could see. He would have the ability to actually have a clear view on what's going on in his policing community and how, for example, he needs to direct his resources, giving, for example, giving instructions to do certain interviews or interventions, or, for example, talk to certain thought leaders in your community. And on an executive level, the executive management will be able to see KPIs, the key performance indicators of his police force, of his region. He'll be able to see, for example, a heat map. How are my regions comparing one to the other? Is one community doing better than the other community? And if so, why? What has that community done better than the community on the other side? And allows him, obviously, once again, to optimize his resources and do strategic thinking for the future. Here a quick screenshot of the mobile device that could be used by the police agent. So briefing, tasking, community profile, community intelligence, analytics on demographics, building, crimes, etc. From a policing executive perspective, these are the type of heat maps that he could potentially see. How does one region compare to another region? And how can I actually strategically adapt to what is going on in a specific region? City heartbeat. And this is the final one, and this is where everything becomes delicate. And I have to switch to the iPad, please, sir. So let me tell you what City Pulse is. It's a dashboard for mayors. So what we've created is a solution to actually allow a mayor in a very, let's say, easy way to see what the status is of incidents or problems in his city. This could be valid for a city, it could be valid for a province, it could be valid for a country. In other words, you as executive would be able to see around certain KPIs, how's my city doing? In this example, and this is a real example, by the way, we have indicated some elements on emergency, for example, so the city can see I have 2 strategic emergencies, I have 4 concerns, and I have 4 elements I need to be aware of. And the same is valid for transport. He can, for example, see what is the traffic congestion in my city? Are there problems on the roads? Are there no problems on the roads? You can see, for example, how my car parks. Are my car parks full? Are they not full? And if they are full, what do we need to do to actually, let's say, direct people to other locations? And I will go through these KPIs one by one. On the left, you see real-time notifications. A city mayor wants to know if there's a concern in his city. As a governor of a province or of a government department, you want to know if something is happening that you should be aware of. So on the left, you have notifications. So it could be, for example, crime. Has there been a certain criminal incident in a specific region? If someone is murdered, if there's an important car accident involving a school bus, for example, you as an executive want to be informed about this in real time. Also weather, we see more and more the impact of weather on, let's say, communities and cities. So you can actually obviously see how are, let's say, certain predictions coming out in the future. It also involves communication, obviously. As a city mayor, you want to know if there's a problem in an emergency, or if there's a problem around water management or around crime, for example, who are the key people I can address, okay? And you can actually set up a Skype conversation, you can send an email, you can send text messages to these people. And on the left, sorry, on the right rather, like I said, geographic maps, more and more we see that people want to visualize something on a map. So in this practical example, it's all about transport. You can see how your current roads are functioning. Are there certain congestions? Are there certain instances that I need to be aware of? And obviously, once again, can I practically direct my citizens to actually have another path to their work, etc. So it's all about, once again, capturing information, visualizing these KPIs for you as an executive, and allowing you to actually interact with your management or with your leaders to become a smarter government. So I'll go through a number of these in a bit more detail. For example, if you look at water, you can see what the results are on water. How is the water quality, for example? Is there negative backflow? Wastewater, how are my wastewater levels doing? Do I have a problem in terms of the levels of the wastewater, and do I need to intervene? Social media. Remember I spoke to you about the fact that citizens want to engage more and more with you as a government. Well, as a government, as a city, you need to also listen to these citizens. So when you ask a question, citizens actually expect you as a government to listen and to take their feedback into consideration and to act on that feedback. And here, for example, I've added the example of a social media analysis. So either you can do this using Facebook or Twitter or other social media sources, but you can equally have a platform that you as a government provide where citizens can actually provide certain input. So, for example, if you ask the question, okay, how are my citizens feeling about the way that I as a government provide schooling services or transport, then you can see literally what the people are saying. So are people positive, are they negative, are they rather male or female, and also on an age category, how are they feeling about a certain service. And once again, you have to see this in a strategic perspective. Once you have this type of information, you can actually start measuring your actions. You can define what you need to do, for example, to have a more positive feeling about schooling or transport, for example. If people are not happy with the transport, do some more profound interviews with your citizens to understand what the real problem is, and then obviously identify programs or projects to actually change the mindset or improve the service from a government service perspective. How am I doing on time, miss? Finished? Okay. Then I'll do one more, which is my last and favorite one. So I spoke to you about traffic, but you can combine this, for example, with incidents. So if you have an incident in your city, and how do we simulate the incident? We shake the iPad, by the way. You get the real-time notification. This means that there's an incident in your city that you have to respond to. So you as a mayor are now aware that something is happening. You can call your task force, and you can once again see what the impact is of a certain incident on your traffic, for example. So in this example, we've had a fire in a certain location, and we can actually do predictive analytics on what the consequence is of this fire in your city. So if you remember, and I'll go back in time, currently, it's very much green around the center of Montpellier. We've had the incident where there was a fire. If we now do predictive analytics and we can scroll this up to 15, 30, or 45 minutes, we can actually see that the area where this, and I'll indicate this as well, so you can see that the red fire indication near the Montpellier, that's an indication of the incident visualized on the map. And you can once again see what the implications are in terms of traffic management for your citizens. So I think I want to obviously remain within the time frame that's been allocated to me. The key message I want to pass on to is actually very simple. Governments are moving to mobile applications. Your citizens are becoming, like James Bond, very demanding on what you as a government, as a city provide in terms of services. You have to take the basics into consideration, defining a good strategy, being able to take citizen input into consideration and acting on that, and obviously, once again, adapting your strategy on the way that the citizens expect you as a government to react to that. So with that, I think I want to end here. I want to thank you all for the time that's been allocated to me. It's been a pleasure once again to talk to you. And I hope at least that I've been able to move away from a theoretical discussion and, like James Bond, to a certain extent, come up with some practical examples of what we can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. William. We'll keep any question at the end of this session.